Hey. Welcome to episode 19 of the TeacherGoals podcast. Super excited tonight because we're going to be talking about one of my favorite topics, at-risk students and how to engage at-risk students. When I was a high school science teacher, I loved working with what were termed at-risk students. So we are going to definitely be engaging in that conversation tonight. But before we do, I love to know who we have in the house with us tonight. And so tell me where you're from, your role in education. And I want to know what's on your travel list this summer, where you're going. Are we going to get to any beaches this summer, cruises, islands? I want to hear, what are you doing? And for those of you that may be new, my name is Erica Terry. I am from Healthy Wealthy Educators. Super excited to be collaborating on the Teacher Goals podcast. And tonight we have a special guest, Dr. Don Parker, who is going to be sharing. He's a principal, educator, speaker, author. And so he's going to be sharing so many tips and strategies with us on how to engage at-risk students. So you're definitely in for a treat tonight. And so before I bring him on, let's see who we have with us. Once again, let me know where you're from, your role in education, and where you are traveling this summer. And so we have Ali. Hello, how are you? We have Elena from New Jersey. I love that the Teacher Goals community is worldwide. So from Indonesia, we have a wall. Hello. We have Sienna. Welcome. We have Willie from Arkansas. Welcome to the Teacher Goals podcast. We have Jessica. Welcome. Welcome. We have someone, Sudanese living in Malaysia. Welcome. I love it. We have Trinidad and Tobago. We have Carrie. So welcome. She's an elementary teacher of 5-year-olds. So here in the state, that's like kindergarten. So welcome. We have Lakitha, who is a first grade teacher from Georgia. Welcome. I am down here in hot Georgia with you as well. And today we hit in my car, it read 105, y'all. It has been a hot summer already, and we are just in June. We have Lucia from Samoa. Hello, welcome. From Panama, we have Anna. Welcome, Marva. How are you? We have Rashad from the Bahamas, who is a trained teacher and traveling to Florida this year. So welcome to the States. We have Maria Alexa from Colombia. We have someone from Canada. I can't see the name, but welcome. We have Erica. Of course, I love that name, from Egypt. Welcome. We have Doug from Virginia. I just saw Birmingham, Alabama. We have C. Oliver. Welcome from Birmingham, Alabama. And so there are so many of you all here with us tonight. So excited that you're here. And I'll be pulling up a few more. But before I do, just in case this is your first time, I'm going to kind of share with you how we roll here at the Teacher Goals podcast. And so very soon I'll be bringing up Dr. Don Parker, and I'll be interviewing him. While we are engaging in our interview, feel free to ask questions. Put them in the chat, because at the very end of our interview, he's going to be answering all of your questions. So you can either put them in as they come to you, and I'll make sure that we get back to them, or you can hold them until the end and add them to the chat. But either way, I will make sure that we get your questions answered, because we love to engage here. And so if you get ideas, strategies, just put them in the comments, because we like to learn from each other as well as learn from our speaker. And so once again, thank you so much for joining us. Tonight's question was all about where you're from, your role in education, and where you're traveling this year. And so I'm going to say a few more hellos, and then we are just going to jump right into our interview. So hello to Olivia from Mobile, who is a teacher and a coach. We have Sienna, who is from New York speech language pathologist with no travel planned or scheduled. And that's okay. Sometimes you just need to be at home and chill and relax. We have Angeline from Malaysia. We have Angeline, another Angeline from the Philippines. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We have Jason from New York, who is a teaching resident. Welcome. We have Shelly, a second grade teacher in Ohio. Hello and welcome. And then last but certainly not least, we have Doug, who is a middle school math teacher that's headed to the DR in July. We'll enjoy that trip. Doug, wish I could be in your suitcase or something. I feel like being on the beach. So I definitely enjoy that trip. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight. We truly appreciate that you take your time to hang out with us. And tonight we're going to be talking about strategies to engage at-risk students. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and bring on our guest, Dr. Don Parker. Hello.
Hey, good evening. How you doing, Erica?
I am good. How are you?
Man, I'm so good, man. If I said that I wasn't doing good, I would be lying. I am doing excellent.
Well, we are so happy to have you with us tonight. So it is 105 down here in Georgia. What did you all get today in Chicago?
You know what? In Chicago, we hit 89 degrees. But I'm gonna tell you, when I was in Georgia visiting some of my people, my aunt, she has a dog and a cat. It was so hot outside. I went outside. I saw the dog chasing the cat, and they were both walking. That's how hot it was.
Yes, that is how hot it is. I was in the car today and I was like, okay, there's something's wrong with my air, or it's just so hot, like the car won't even cool down. So it is hot, hot, hot. And I'm like, it's only June. And so, yes, speaking of hot, we are talking at-risk students tonight. And sometimes those classrooms can feel like they are hot. So we are going to get into it.
You're right. You know, it's high-pressure situations with those kids.
Yes.
Acting up, feeling a little embarrassed, a little nervous. Those armpits get a little wet.
Yes.
You gotta know how to mitigate those circumstances.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. And we'll definitely be talking about it tonight. But before we do, we want to know, who are you? How did you, get into education? Kind of tell us a little bit about yourself.
All right. Grew up on the south side of Chicago. Went away to school and came back to Chicago. And I took my first teaching job at 21 years old on the south side of Chicago, in a high school on the south side of Chicago. And just like you said, it was hot in those classrooms. The kids, they think I look like them. So, I really had to earn their respect. So I was put in a lot of situations where I had to really mitigate classroom behavior and learn classroom management and build relationships with my students, just to get them to comply with what I needed them to do so I can get them in a place where they could learn. And so since I was doing that from 21 years old to now, what really happened is I was a PE major in college, and I have a minor in health. And so when I went to teach at a high school, I wanted to be a PE teacher. That's just what I knew I wanted to do. But since I didn't have seniority, I was low on the totem pole. They gave me all health classes.
Okay.
So the good thing about it is I did have to learn a lot about classroom management and how to mitigate student behavior. But what was really helpful is if you know about the health curriculum in high school, it has a lot to do with social and emotional learning. Because really, you're teaching students how to make healthy choices that's going to benefit them. And so teaching a health curriculum just taught me a lot about how to teach students social and emotional learning and how to make healthy choices that will benefit them. And so that continued into a role of dean of students. I took a job as a dean of students at a high school, and I worked with students on their social and emotional behavior, taking advantage of teachable moments, building connections with students. And that's what brought me here today, is just continuing to study school discipline, educational leadership, instructional leadership. I was a principal for the past 6 years. I recently resigned my position so I can speak and do professional development full time. I consult with principals and teachers, work with teachers on how to build those teacher-student relationships, and work with principals on how to improve their culture and climate of their school.
Love it. So I'm gathering from what you said that we're going to get into how we're connecting social emotional learning to, the strategies that we implement, and even maybe a little bit about healthy choices. But before we get into all of that, when we talk about our at-risk students, depending on where you are, that might mean something different to you. So when we talk about increasing engagement of at-risk students, what do we really mean? Like when we're talking about being at risk?
Okay. Well, there are certain factors that make a student at risk, and that can be coming from a family of poverty or having some difficulties with learning. Also, students who have a lot of personal, social, and God bless you, a lot of personal, social, and emotional issues. So, a lot of those risk factors put students at risk for doing well at school and for completing school. And so that's why we term them at risk, because they have so many risk factors that hinder their success in the classroom and in the school environment.
And so when they have these risk factors that you talked about, let's just start off with some of the challenges before we get into the strategies that we can use to increase engagement. When you're working in schools or, even at the school that you just resigned from as a principal, or maybe even in your own classroom, what were some of those challenging behaviors or difficult situations that you've seen or helped people to overcome in doing this work?
Well, okay, a lot of students have off-task behaviors where they're disrupting other students in class while you're trying to teach a lesson or while they're trying to work on an assignment. Those students may be disrupting class by, starting any kind of commotion. Because
Hmm.
really, we know about Darwin's theory, where he teaches that the strong survive. And so we have to adapt to the environment. However, some of those at-risk students, they come from tumultuous environments and they don't
Hmm.
want to adapt to the environment. They want the environment to adapt to them. So they cause chaos and they cause disruption, and that's what they're used to.
Hmm.
And when they can't learn and be focused and on task, they hide their inabilities to do the work and do the assignments by disrupting class. And so that's what I found early on when I was teaching. And so
Hmm.
what I had to realize is that, what, if the student was able to do the work and if he, had a desire to do the work, if he could do it, then this is what he would be engaging in. And so what I found, what I had to do is, work with the students, encourage them, let them know that, hey, if you can't understand this, I'm going to be here to help you, to support you, to learn it. And you know what? There's no reason to disrupt class. You have to get to the root of the problem. The root of the problem is the student really didn't know what to do. And so I said, now that I know what's really going on, I'm going to help you learn this. You don't have to be ashamed that you don't know the material. That's why you're here anyway. You're here to learn. So
Hmm.
let's get down to it. And then just help them with the assignment and let them know that I was there for him, for their support.
Yes. And so I loved how you talked about getting to the root of the problem and really developing what I heard you say is developing that relationship with your students where you can kind of have a real conversation like, what's going
Mhm.
on? How can I help you to be successful? And so when we talk about like some tips, tools, and strategies to increase engagement of at risk students, so we have this student in our class who, is not engaged or is engaged in the wrong behaviors we don't want to see. They're like tearing it up, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
What do we do as educators to make sure that we're reaching these students and helping them to be successful in our classrooms?
Okay. Well, there's a quote that says, um, "When you're at peace, that's when you're supposed to plan for war." So, in other words, you have to anticipate that there's going to be some behaviors in class that you're going
Hmm.
to have to deal with. So, you have to be proactive. And so, I call it, you have to have your if, when, then plan. All right. It's called your if, when, then plan. And really, what that is, it's not a matter of if it's going to happen, it's a matter of when it's going to happen. And when I say that, I'm talking about the behavior of students. Like the student is going to do something that's going to be off task to disrupt the classroom, maybe disrespect, maybe insubordination. Like I said, it's not a matter of if it's going to happen, it's a matter of when it's going to happen. And when it's going to happen, then how are you going to handle that? You have to have the then in place already. And so that's what I mean when I say when you're at peace, you have to plan for war. So you have to think about, okay, what could possibly happen in the classroom? And then when it happens, what am I going to do? So you have to have diffusers in place that's already ready. So when a student talk about, hey, I don't want to do this work, or I don't even want to be in this class, you got to already have a script in the back of your mind. Well, you know what? You probably don't want to be here. However, I want you to be here. You're probably not interested in the material, but hey, just give me an opportunity to explain it in a way that I can make it interesting for you. And we're going to get through this assignment together. And just kind of calm the kid down, because I heard the phrase before that conflict is inevitable, but combat is optional. So there's going to be conflict in the classrooms.
Mhm.
Absolutely. However, that doesn't mean you have to engage in that combat with the student to escalate the situation. What we have to do is de-escalate the situation by letting the students know we just have to calm their fears, let them know we're here to support them.
Love it. So de-escalate the situation, calm their fears, and let them know that we are here to support them. And so I know that me personally, I had a high school background, right? So I
Mhm.
found it kind of easier to just be myself, say what I needed to say, and just be that real teacher with my students. But if you're working with younger students, what are some of the strategies that suggest in order for them to be able to diffuse the situation and build these relationships with their students?
Okay, so with younger students, a lot of them, even with older students, they really sometimes don't know how to control their behaviors. They don't know how to really control their emotions. And so I remember when I was a high school dean and I would get referrals from teachers. And then I told the teacher, hey, you know what? You have to develop a rapport with this student. And I
Mhm.
bet you once you do that, you will see an instant decrease in this student's behavior. And I said, so you got to kind of model respect. You got to teach respect. You got to take advantage of teachable moments, when you're redirecting students, as opposed to just kicking them out the class and sending them to the office. And then they would say, like in your case, you said you're a science teacher. So you
Mhm.
say, well, Mr. Parker, I'm a science teacher. I'm not the social worker. I don't have to teach respect. I said, well, if you show up with that attitude every day in your classroom, you DOA. She's like, what you mean? I said, dead on arrival, because you're gonna have the same problems day in and day out. So even with the younger students, you have to teach respect. You have to role model it. You have to catch kids doing good. And students, especially younger students, see that. So when we talk about catch you doing good, younger students, they automatically have an affinity to want to impress their teachers anyway. And they
Mhm.
want that positive attention. And so when all the kids are doing exactly what you want them to do, so I can say, hey, Erica, that's a great job taking out your pen and paper and getting started on your assignment. And then next thing you know, her neighbor is going to want that same attention. So they're going to take out their paper and pen and get started. And then I can say, Erica, that's an excellent job. I love the way how you also have taken out your pen and paper, how you're sitting with your eyes directed on me, and you're in a position where you're ready to learn. Thank you. You're such a great student. I love having you as one of my top scholars in my class. Now you start letting students know what the expectations are. You praise them for doing good. And because you're rewarding the good, you're going to get more of that good.
Rewarding the good to get more of the good. I love that. And we have some hashtags in the comments. Catch them doing good. We love it. We love it. We love it. And so, moving on, when we think about, okay, we're catching them doing good, we're seeing these positive changes in the classroom.
Mm-hmm.
This is a Teacher Goals podcast. So, when we think about like a teacher goal, that educators will be able to achieve by applying the principles that we've been talking about tonight, like what are some of those shifts and improvements that they see in the classroom?
Oh, well, you're going to see a lot more students engaged, students exhibiting more appropriate behaviors, and, students really on task and going along to work to meet your expectations. So you're a science teacher, so you're familiar with the acronym CER. All right. In science, CER, remind me, that stands for claim, evidence, and reasoning. When we talk about that in science, CER is claim, evidence, and reasoning. However, when we're talking about students and building a classroom culture of respect that we want to see, CER stands for consistency, expectations, and relationships. And so those are the three things that students really need in school. They need consistency, they need expectations, and they need relationships. So as teachers, when we're being consistent, when we let students know what our expectations are, and then when we're working to build those relationships, to build those stronger relationships over time, you will see a engaged student environment in a really strong classroom culture of learning.
All right, so you all got that. CER equals consistency, expectations, and relationships. Such good advice tonight.
Now,
But with all,
let, let me.
uh-oh,
I got to give credit to the person I learned that from.
uh-oh,
Okay,
all right,
so
credit.
I learned that from Todd Whitaker. All right, so I was watching a conference, a virtual conference, and
Mm-hmm.
Todd Whitaker, he put the question out there to the audience. He said, what do students need the most? He asked the audience to rank what did they need the most between consistency, expectations, and relationships. And so to me, there's no one ranking one that ranks higher than the other one. Students need all three of those in order to be viable, in order for you to create that classroom culture.
Love it, and love that you gave nods and kudos where it is due. So definitely consistency, expectations, and relationships. I feel like we need to pose that question to our audience. Which one is most important,
Which
or
is
do you
most important?
agree
And so for the
that
audience,
all three?
yeah, actually, of course, it's all three, but you know what? It may be different in some classroom environments. All right, depending on the students that you have. All right, some students need more consistency more so than they need expectations. Some students come from the home already with high expectations from their parents. All
Hmm.
right, however, they want a strong relationship with the teacher. Other students, they don't have consistency in the home. And so when they get to the classroom, like I said, they want the environment to adapt to them instead of
Hmm.
adapting to the environment. So we have to give them that consistency, like, here's our behavior standards that we agree to, and we want to follow them. And then you will get rewarded for following them. But then if we don't follow them, then we're going to have some follow-up conversations and some interventions to get you back on track. And so, like I said, it just depends on the students in your class who you have in front of you.
Love it. And so what I heard you say is we're going to have some follow-up conversations and interventions. So any like examples of interventions that someone, could implement if they, are trying to build this relationship and they feel like it's just not working. Or maybe they're kind of new educator and they're still getting their feet wet. What are some interventions that you suggest?
Well, I love that you said that because really some of it is a lot of what you're doing right now. All right. So the reason I love having a conversation with you is because you are actively listening, and I can tell that you're listening with more than just your ears. You're listening to understand, and you repeat back to me everything that I've said, and for your listening audience to make sure they get it. And so, of course, Stephen Covey said we have to seek to understand and then to be understood. And so, when you're building that relationship with the students, you have to listen to them. You have to let them know that you've heard what they said, you know how they feel, and that you empathize with their feelings. And then you let them be heard. And then after that, then you say, okay, I understand how you're feeling. I validate the way that you feel. However, these are our expectations, and I know that you can meet these expectations. And you have that follow-up conversation with them, let them feel heard. And once students feel heard and they know that you listen to them and you care about them, they're going to be more apt to go along with your classroom procedures and your behavior standards, meet those behavior standards that you have.
Absolutely. And with all good things come challenges, right?
Mhm.
No strategies that we implement, especially in the world of education, come without some type of challenge. So, as educators are doing this important work, what are some of the challenges that they might face and what can they do to overcome them?
Okay, so like I said, have a plan and constantly build the relationship. So when we talk about students and their misbehavior and how we have to redirect them, we talk about teachable moments. All right. Now, when you're working with students, before that teachable moment, there's also something that's called a lovable moment or a loving moment. So before you move to that teachable moment, first have a loving moment. Let the student know, hey, I see you, I value you, and I see you may be having some issues or problems today. Is there anything that's going on that's preventing you from doing what it is that I'm asking you to do? Or is there anything that's preventing you from meeting our expectations? I want to know what's really going on with you. Get that student to open up. Hey, are you okay? You know what? You're not yourself today. I know you're a great kid. That's not typical of your behavior. That's not who you are. So please tell me what's bothering you, or what's preventing you from doing what it is that we're supposed to be doing? Is there any way I can support you and help you move past it? All right, you have a conversation with that student. you whisper in that student's ear, or you take that student off to the side, or you have a classroom area set up in your classroom. This is trauma-informed education, where students have trauma. And so we have to treat the whole child. And like I said, we have to have that plan. So we have to have some space in our classroom where their students can go and get themselves together, where they need to go over there and do some deep breathing, whether they need to play with some fidget toys, whether they need to play with some things that, stimulate them. Then we have to give them that space and time to do that, to get them in the right mind frame to regulate their bodies, regulate their emotions, and then be able to come back to our classroom community and join our learning activities. So have a calming area, a calming space in your classroom.
Love these suggestions. They are so good. And the comments are lighting up tonight. And so we're definitely going to get to that. But I can tell you just from me glancing over that it has been a majority that feel like relationships are where you start, starting with
Mm-hmm.
relationships first, and then going back to the CER, relationships first, and then from there, you can build on consistency and expectations. So I'm thinking about, that the audience is really into building relationships first.
Sure.
Any suggestions or advice, especially maybe for new teachers, or someone who may be struggling to build those relationships? Like, what are some actions or an action that they can implement even as soon as tomorrow, if they're still in, or as soon as the new school year begins, that they can do to improve relationships with students so that they can engage them?
Absolutely. Okay, so real quick, I like Alan Miller's research. He talks about the 2x10 method. And so what that means is for 2 minutes every day for 10 days in a row, you engage your student. And so if it's that one student who you've been having a hard time to build a relationship with, if he put up that wall or she put up that wall and she avoids those relationships, you feel like every time you take 2 steps forward, they take 2 steps backwards, then you engage them every day for 2 minutes and have a conversation with them. That can be as they're entering the classroom, how you greet them. Hey, how are you doing? How was your evening? What do you think about what we're learning? Tell me something interesting going on in your life. You can have different sentence starters that you're going to use for 10 days in a row. And you're going to commit to talking to that student for 10 days in a row for 2 minutes every day. And sometimes what a lot of people have said is that this is a very effective strategy in building relationships with students, because now that student is looking forward to seeing you, because now they know, hey, this teacher cares more about me than just a student. This teacher cares about me as a person. All right, so that's real quick. I love that 2x10 method. That's been very effective. You can do it during guided instruction. You can do it at the end of the class. You can do it at the beginning of the class, and just pick your spots. And then I love something for the beginning of the classroom activity is called just morning meetings, where so I can walk into my classroom and we've built this culture already. And so I can say, hey, everybody circle up. And within 30 seconds, those desks are all cleared out the middle of the classroom. We have all our chairs in circles. And so now we just have a discussion where we have a talking piece. And whoever has the talking piece, that's the person whose turn it is to talk. So I start off my circles with just, I ask for a one-word response to the question for the first time when everybody goes around. And that simply is, use one word to describe how you feel right now. And so each person takes the turn saying a word how they feel. And then when we listen to how the students are feeling, then that gives the teachers right there a great read on how our students are feeling, in that moment of time. Now we know which students' day may not have gotten off to a good start. And so now we know which students we may have to support more socially and emotionally as we go on throughout the day. All right, so that's just a morning meeting. And then, another strategy I like to use with elementary students at the beginning of the school year is the beach ball activity. Have you guys heard of the beach ball activity?
I have not, so enlighten me.
It's a piece of cake. All right, so all you do is you take a beach ball, all right, and you just write an icebreaker, or a question on each color of the beach ball.
Okay.
A different question. Hey, who's your favorite superhero? What is your favorite food? All right, who's your favorite relative? All right, what's your favorite thing to do? All right, what are you really good at? And so the students will stand in a circle, and then they toss the ball. And so if I catch the ball and then my right hand lands on who's my favorite superhero, Spider-Man is my favorite superhero. Well, why is Spider-Man your favorite superhero? Because I think he's my cousin. His name Peter Parker, and my name's John Parker.
Right.
But then I say, but seriously, I love Spider-Man because of the phrase I learned that to whom much is given, much is required. And then you just get deep with the students. You ask them why, and you just don't let them answer the question and let them off the hook. You
Mhm.
delve now into these questions like, well, why? Well, how long you been watching Superman or Spider-Man? Why do you like them? And you just have a deeper conversation. So now not only me as a teacher, I'm learning more about my student, but now all my other classroom classmates are learning about their classmates. And now they're getting to know each other. They're seeing what they have in common. And that's just an easy, non-threatening icebreaker. It's a lot more comfortable than a teacher having a student stand up and introduce themselves to the rest of the class.
Right. And I loved it. And it's so like beginning of year, like the perfect activity. So great, great strategies. And I know that you have an entire book filled with more information, more strategies, more tips, more tools on how to engage at-risk students through building relationships. And so it's called Building Bridges. Kind of tell us a little bit. Oh, there you go. Tell us about your book and how it differs from other books out there.
Okay. So building bridges is a compilation of a lot of the research that I did. When I went to earn my doctorate degree and I had to write a dissertation, my dissertation chair said, you know what, as you start this journey, you have to study a topic that you really love and that you're really connected to, because if you don't, this process is going to be grueling. And so I've always been interested in school discipline, creating an engaging environment, and learning how to connect with those at-risk students and build relationships. So that's what my research is on. And so my book is a lot of my research, but more so a lot of my personal experiences. So I start every chapter off with an introduction about a certain topic, and then I delve into the research. What does the research say about building relationships with students? And then the next section of that chapter will say, what does this look like in the real world? And then I'll just talk about my experience, how I've used the research, if it was effective, if I find that it didn't work. And then I share just evidence-based strategies and real life experiences on how I've built relationships with students. And then at the end of every chapter, there's discussion questions, there are surveys and reflection questions. And so even myself, when I first got the book back, it was published by Solution Tree. And when they mailed it to me, my very first copy, I I did the same test with my book that I do with any other book. I picked it up, I just flipped to a random page, and I started skimming. And I just said, okay, well, how long is this gonna keep my attention? And if I found myself sitting there flipping pages, I'm like, oh yes, this is a good book. There's some good stuff in this book. And so when I did the test on my book, guys, I was sitting in the same spot for over 2 hours. So that means it's a great book, guys. So go ahead and pick up your copy of Building Bridges, Engaging Students at Risk Through the Power of Relationships. You can use it as a book study for reflection questions, discussion questions, and just have conversations where you self-reflect and get other tips, strategies, and thoughts from the people in your own community.
Love it. And you can get your copy by going to teachergoals.com/building bridges. And so, for people that want to continue the conversation and continue to engage with you, tell us, where can they find you?
You know what? They can find me on my website. My website is drdonparker.com. Again, that's drdonparker.com. And they can email me. Now, my email is dr.donparker@comcast.net. So that's dr, don't forget the period, donparker@comcast.net. And then they can follow me on Twitter. And my Twitter is at Dr. Don Parker 5. No, it's at Dr. Don Parker 1. So dr, no period, Don Parker 1. And that's my Twitter handle. And so they can find me in all those places. And I actually follow people back, and I actually, respond to people. And so I like having engagement, because really, you know what? A podcast like this is excellent because you can make some impact and you can really share some strategies and things like that. But for transformational change and to really make a long lasting impact, you have to have more of an implementation and, deeper learning as it comes to a lot of these topics. Right now, we're just talking about surface stuff, but I like to really help people have transformational change in their classrooms and in their schools. And so that's why I believe in really following up and building relationships with other people to support them in that way.
Love it. So definitely reach out to him on Twitter. It sounds like that's the main place if you want to dive deeper into the strategies, or stay on and ask your questions here, because that's what we are going to do next. But before we get into the Q&A, I just want to thank you for joining us. I learned so much tonight, and I'm looking at the comments, and everyone loved the strategies. People are already talking about they want to try the beach ball activity. And so thank you so much for sharing so many nuggets with us tonight.
Oh, I love it. I love it. So you know what? And then for older kids, for older students, working with older students, another icebreaker activity I love. It's not new. You probably guys have already heard about it, but it's called Would You Rather. And so when you're working with other older students, they say, would you rather, meet your ancestors from way back in the past or your future grandchildren? And you just throw that discussion question out there, and the students will discuss it. They'll answer. What it does as a teacher, it gets you to understand, your students' values, how they think, and then it just makes for interesting topics of discussion. So I love doing techniques like that. Anytime I can get to see how my students are thinking, get a feel for their values and things like that, have those safe and comfortable discussions. I love taking advantage of those opportunities.
Yes, I love that. And I think there's really a game, Would You Rather. I feel like I've bought that game and played it with my family. And so yes, I love, love, love it. So thank you so much for joining us tonight. And
Thank
we're
you.
gonna dive into the Q&A right now. So let me go ahead and start pulling up some questions, comments. I started already showing, so many people are saying thank you. Great information, great icebreaker. And so definitely got some great tips tonight. And so we're going to start off. Someone asked, hold on one second. All right. So there was a question you were talking about and sharing about having that calming area. And
Mm-hmm.
so the question that came up during that time was, how long should a student be in that area? So kind of just walk us through, for someone that may have never used a calming area before, kind of just walk us through that strategy.
All right.
Um,
Sure. So let's say you have a space in your classroom. You may have beanbag chairs. All right. You may have some books that students like to read. You might have some fidget toys. You may have, you know, any type of those toys that students who have sensory disorders, things like that students need. And then you just ask them, you know what? How much time do you need in this space to calm down? Once you take some deep breaths and regulate your emotions, how much time do you need to be over here in this area? Because really, I really want you to calm down, and I want you to take advantage of this opportunity to regulate your emotions. However, I really want you to join back the group so you can just stay on task with what we're. How much time do they need? Sometimes it could be 2 minutes, sometimes 3 minutes, sometimes 5. But then if you see the student is not really um, making a real effort to calm down and do what he is, then you have to just remind them of the expectations. And you don't want it to be where they like, okay, well, this is an out. If I don't want to do the assignment, I'm gonna act like I have a disruption. I'm gonna go over to the comment area. And so if you see a student like that, then that's when you really have to, work with the social worker to find out some other de-escalation techniques that you can use with the student, because the goal is always to get them back, with the learning activity after they have regulated their emotions.
Awesome. Awesome. So thank you for answering that one. When it came to the 210, people were saying how much they liked it. So great strategy. Thank you for sharing that one. As well as the beach ball strategy. People did not know. I didn't know about that one either. So I
All
loved it.
right.
And I was like, even thinking about professional development, I'm like, we could even open that up as an icebreaker
Oh,
for staff.
perfect
Yeah, I'm like, that would
icebreaker.
be so
You could
good.
be like, where did you go for summer vacation? What book have you read? What great
Yes.
movies did you see? And then just really comfortable icebreakers where people can share. And what it does is really so great at building relationships, because it's getting you to know information about a person that you normally wouldn't even, find out.
Yes. And so the last question that I see came up very early in our conversation. And so thinking about starting teacher as a new teacher, someone asked like how many mentors you had, or just in general, do you believe new teachers should have mentors? And like what's some advice or anything that you can give about finding the right mentor for you?
Oh, yes, I definitely believe in mentorship because, true leadership is knowing the way, going the way, and showing the way. And so if you can get a mentor who can help you avoid a lot of the pitfalls and, kind of help you out with some of those things that they don't teach you in undergrad, as far as, how to stay on top of your professional responsibilities, give you some just tips to avoid burnout. And then just somebody who can be your thought partner and encourage you along the way, you like even not just your teaching practices, but even just your social and emotional development
Mhm.
as a teacher, which some of those times where it is rough and you feel like you want to give up. You have that mentor that can really encourage you along and say, hey, what's going on? How can I support you? So yes, I did have some mentors when I started off teaching. I started off at 21 years old, like I said, at a high school on the south side of Chicago in a very um, underserved and underprivileged school. And I remember when we went outside for outdoor activity because it was in the beginning of the school year, it was still warm outside. We were in our softball unit. And so after the softball unit or after the softball class, I was telling the students to come back into the building. And one student was, he just continued to do what he was doing. He was ignoring me. And so I knew the student's name. I called him by name. I said, hey, you know what? Come on, it's time to go back in. Guys have to go to the locker room, change into your clothes, and get to your next class. And he thought that I was trying to embarrass him. So he started cursing at me and calling me all out my name, telling me I was a fake teacher. And how am I going to tell him what to do? Because he's a senior in class and I'm 21 years old. So you can't tell me what to do, this and that. And I was upset. I was really upset. And I felt myself getting really mad. A veteran teacher of like 20 something years saw this. And so, after we got the student back in the building and, came to the office, the veteran teacher helped me talk to that student and let him know, hey, that's very disrespectful. That's not how we do things around here. And then I was still mad when the kid left. But then the teacher told me, you know what? You're going to have situations like that. Don't take it personal. Some kids are just not used to showing respect. And over time, once you talk to the kid, get to know him, then, you won't have situations like that. But you know what? Don't let it get mad. Because I was breathing hard. My heart was pounding. I felt so disrespected. But, he coached me through that. And then a principal, we call her Mama Hawk because, the name of the school was Hillcrest Hawks. She was the principal. All the kids called her Mama Hawk. And she taught me a lot that has to deal with educational leadership, instructional leadership, how to build relationships with staff, parents, and
Mhm.
things like that. And I was under her leadership for quite some time. And I just learned a lot, watching her, being in meetings with her, and then her encouraging me along my professional journey. So I pay a lot of homage to my mentors.
Yes, mentors are so important. And I mean, they teach you these lessons. Kimberly put in the comments, and I thought it went so perfect with your story. Connect before you correct, right? And so learning
Absolutely.
that lesson and having someone there to help to guide you through that process definitely is useful. So that was a great story. And then we have one more question from Nicole who says, what about schools that have timeout rooms for violent students? Like, what is your opinion on that? And, how do you suggest that someone use these timeout rooms?
Well, you know what? Um, at my school, we had something called the Bridges Room. And so in the Bridges Room, once you put the student in the room, you have to engage and have those conversations about, hey, what happened? Why did this happen?
Mhm.
And what can we do in the future if we are faced in the if we face a similar situation? So you have to talk the student through it, and you have to have the student reflect on their behavior. And then you can't give the student the answer. You have to let the student come to realize on their own that
Mhm.
they could have made a better choice, and you empower them to go down that inquiry, that path of inquiry, to find out, hey, you know what? When I did this what happened, and I can see why I was wrong in that situation. And so, in order to get the right responses from students, what you have to do is just ask the right questions. You know what? Well, how are you feeling during that moment? The way you acted, did that benefit you or did that hurt you? All right. If you had a second chance to do that again, what would you do differently? All right. What
Mm-hmm.
does it look like when you do that differently? All right. So if you're in this situation again, what will you commit to doing different the next time? And so you have that conversation with students, you really coach them through it and let them respond to the questions. You can't just put them in a room and think they're going to come out, what do you call it, redeemed or whatever.
Yes.
you know, you have to, coach them through that process and let them see for themselves, how they could have done things differently.
And
And
I
then, and that's the expectation you hold them to.
Yes, and so more important than what you call it, it's really what you do once they get there, not just letting it be a place to calm down and send them back to class, but really having those discussions and using it as an opportunity, to build those relationships and help them to understand what they can do differently. So great,
Yeah,
great,
and one more
great.
thing on that. You
Hmm.
know what? Another thing I like to say is to educators all the time. So when I did my research on what are the strategies and methods to use to keep students, to actually get students to improve their behavior. All right, one of the responses was building relationships. That's what the research says. And another thing that the research says is authoritative counseling. And so many times adults let the students off the hook and they let themselves off the hook. And they miss that authoritative counseling piece, like I just modeled for you. And so
Hmm.
if a teacher sent a student to my office, then what I would do, I would send maybe one of my auxiliary staff to that classroom. And I have the teacher come to my office. And then I said, you know what? This relationship has to get mended. So I need you two to talk about what happened in the class. And I need you two to discuss what is it that you need from one another so we can make this relationship work. So the teacher can teach and the student can learn. And so a lot of teachers, they don't want to come up and follow up with the student. They just want you to handle it. All
Hmm.
right. But that's letting themselves off the hook and that's letting the student off the hook. The student needs to know that the teacher is going to hold them accountable. And that's through that authoritative counseling. Hey, you know what? That's unacceptable behavior in class. What do you need from me in order to, for you to stay on task and behave to meet our behavior standards in our classroom? And then I want to know what you need from me as your teacher, because I don't want to be sending you to Dr. Parker's office all day. I really want this relationship to work. And so I give my teacher and students time to have that restorative conversation.
That is great. And I love, and I've never really heard the bringing the teacher into the conversation. I think that's a game changer. So definitely we're going to have to bring you back on and dive more into
Do a
that.
deeper
That is,
dive. Do a deeper dive.
yeah,
Yes,
do a
yes.
deeper dive on that one. That is a good one. And so Ken came on with a question right there at the end. Ken, you just made it, bud. And he says he's moving from fifth grade to 12th grade next year. Woo! And so he says this is his third year as a lateral entry teacher. He totally agrees with building relationships. How do you feel teaching has changed in your view over the last 10 years? And what should he be aware of going to teach older students?
Okay. Well, I think what's changed with teaching is that students, you have to do a lot to really keep students engaged. All right, it is a right now society, and students are definitely a part of that right now culture
Mm.
where they can get any information they need right now, like on their phones, on their computers, searching up the internet. All right, and their attention spans. We talk about students' attention spans. How they say in elementary, a attention span will only last as many minutes as their age. So in other
Mm.
words, if a student is 5 years old, then their attention span is like probably less than 5 minutes. All right. But we're seeing it's like that with older kids too. And so as you work with older students, what you have to do when you teach them is you have to scaffold and you have to, tune in to their radio station that they're listening to. And that radio station is WIIFM. Everybody wants to know what's in it for me. And so when you're working with older students, you have to let them know how the content you're teaching them is going to affect their future or how they can use it in their future. Because if you think that you can just go in and just roll out your lesson without building that connection, without connecting that content to something that they're interested in, then guess what? That lesson isn't going to go very well. And so when I was brought up in teaching, of course, we learned the gradual release model and we learned the Madeline Hunter model. And the very first step to that lesson is what's the hook?
Mm-hmm.
And so that hook, what she calls it, is the anticipatory set. So you have to spend at least a good, 3 to 5 minutes setting up your lesson as to where it's going to spark the students' interest and where you hook them so that they want to learn more information. And you do that by connecting the content to something that they're interested in so they can see how they can use it in their real life so it can be authentic learning.
And take them to WIIFM. What's in it for me?
Have a tune in,
I'm
baby. Have a
taking
tune
that one.
in.
I am taking that one. That's what we are going to listen to. And so, last question once again, Ken says, can you post your book and website in the comments? I'm just going to have you say the website. And I know that we have put the link on for your book. You can get that at teachergoals.com/building bridges, and then your website. Give it to us one more
Yep.
time.
drdonparker.com.
So drdonparker.com.
drdonparker.com.
All right, so there you have it, Dr. Don Parker. We have learned so much, and I'm actually putting it in. I just pulled it up as well, and it's loading. So drdonparker.com. But we have learned so much tonight, so many great strategies, so many tools and resources. And so once again, I just want to say thank you. Thank you so much. I have learned a lot, and Ken says thank you. A lot of people on here are saying thank you. And Jason, I'm telling you, this WWIFM. And I want to thank Peter. Peter is our man tonight. He has been giving us all the hashtags through the whole interview and definitely been recapping.
Yeah, you right here, man. We got it out. We on the same page.
Recapping everything.
So follow me at
you.
Twitter at Dr. Don Parker 1. And I post things like this all the time on my Twitter feed, and teachers, I would be remiss if I didn't say this, man. I respect what you do. I know that you're doing a hard job in the classroom. You are in the trenches, but at the same time, you can turn those trenches into comfortable learning environments where students feel safe, supported, and secure because of that relationship that you develop with them. So it's you guys are doing a very noble job, and I appreciate you for all that you do for your students.
Absolutely. And we appreciate you all for being a part of the Teacher Goals community and hanging out with us every week. And next week, we have a special treat. You are going to meet the founder of the Teacher Goals community, the man behind the memes and all the funny. He gives us the laughs every day. And so he will be with us next week, and we will be back at our regular time next Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we will see you there. Have a great night, everyone.
Have a great night. Thank you, guys. Great
Thank
you all. Enjoy your summers.
Yes.